Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody here to the Noonan Resource Forest Management Plan presentation as part of our Forestry 4020 class. I myself am Joel Tremblay, and with me is Emily Nicholson. We are the two leaders of the Noonan group. So just a brief history on the land base. In 1800, King George III granted 2,380 hectares to King's College. In 1825, the entire land base burnt over in the Great Miramichi Fire, and then after that we had fires in 1880, 1890, 1910, 12, and 1920, just periodically through the land base. And from 1970 to 1977, and from 84 to 86, we had 2 spruce budworm outbreaks, which were treated with different insecticides. In 1984, the provincial government deeded the land to UMB, and in 2003 it was designated as an important off-campus land. So this here is just our an entire group of 13 people, and then all of our roles as well within the project. This is just a brief outline of what we will be going over this afternoon, and now I'm going to hand it over to Emily with the goals and objectives.
Hello everyone, my name is Emily Nicholson. Here are a couple of our goals and objectives. We have 3 different categories today. We have social, environmental, and financial goals. We'll start with social. The first goal is property identification. This will ensure that 100% of property boundaries are identified within the first 5-year period. The second one is public safety. This ensures that all bridges, water crossings, culverts, and other roads are safe for travel for recreational and commercial use. And the third social goal starts our undergraduate research and teaching goals. The first one is to remove 50% of balsam fir within 25 years. The second one is to increase old growth forest for research by protecting 100% of old growth stands in the forest. And the third one is to promote stand diversity for research opportunities by increasing shade-tolerant eastern white pine and eastern hemlock stands in the land base. Getting into the financial goals, the first one is to generate revenue to pay summer interns. This will initially be met through harvesting activity, and there is another one to potentially generate revenue through carbon credits to pay for research and student interns by dedicating 100 hectares of land on the NRF to carbon credit sale. The next financial goal is to reduce the cost to the landowner. This will ensure that all silviculture activities are subsidized by government subsidies through the YSC Marketing Board to a minimum of 75%. And starting the environmental goals, first one is water quality. This will ensure that all water courses are sediment-free and maintain their current water temperature and increase the forested conditions within the first 5 years. The next one centers around carbon sequestration. This is to increase the carbon sequestered by the land base on the NRF by increasing the amount of old age stands by 10% over 100 years. The next one is to buffer rare stands, waterways, wetlands, and streams. This will ensure a 40-meter buffer is placed around rare species, waterways, and sensitive areas to ensure that harvesting activities or other ecosystem changing research does not interrupt the flow of water on the forest. The next one is to maintain current biodiversity within the forest. This will be accomplished by identifying all forested stands within 5 years. And the last one is wildlife habitat on water bodies. This will ensure that all water-loving habitat is identified within 5 years, and that is 100% protected. And I will hand it over to Joel with the sample design.
Thank you, Emily. So now we're going to get into the sample design of the project. We had 4 different inventories on the land base. We had an overstory inventory, we had a road assessment, a water crossing assessment for all bridges, culverts, and cross drains, and we also assessed all of our wetlands on the land base using the Wetland Ecosystem Services Protocol methods, which is also known as WESP, and we'll get into that later on in the PowerPoint. This here just a quick map with all 328 plots that we inventoried on the land base, as well as all the map rows and wetlands on the land base. So now we're going to go back to Emily with the stand delineation.
So the stand delineation was determined through 3 different sources of data collected in fall of 2020, historical data from 2013, as well as aerial imagery provided by GONB. The data from 2013 and 2020 were categorized down to the top 2 species in each plot, and from there they were sublaid over aerial imagery to determine stand boundaries with the help of the images. And that produced 18 different stand types as well as cut and cleared areas, as you can see on the map in front of you. This determined the stand composition. We were able to determine that pure spruce stands occupy the largest land area at 242 hectares of land, which is 18% of the land base. And balsam fir is the most common species on the land base, covering anywhere from 44 to 88% of species composition within stands. There is a category by the name of other, and this encompasses all stands that represent less than 2% of the land base area. All right, and here is stand volume. So as you can see, the eastern hemlock stands compose the highest volume at approximately 320 cubic meters per hectare, which is 10% of the volume standing on the land base. This encompasses approximately 4.7 hectares of the land base, which is less than 1%. And balsam fir fits into the other category in this slide because it only encompasses 4% of the stand volume available on the land base. Getting into wetlands, the identified wetlands 1 through 6, as seen in orange and red on the map here, were identified by use of the LiDAR-derived wetlands map from GONB, which is an open source GIS layer. Wetland 4 is in red because it is the only one with standing water, and it ranked higher overall in the WESP Services Protocol system, which was developed by Dr. Paul Adamus in 2018. His team measured wetlands across Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, and Newfoundland to determine a provincial standard for functionality, habitat, and wetland value throughout each province, and we were able to use the same scorecard to rank our wetlands against the provincial standard provided by Dr. Adamus. So here is the functionality scorecard for the wetlands on the NRF. As you can see, the water storage delay, hydrologic group, and water quality support groups are all ranked higher than the provincial average, which would be moderate otherwise. Here are just some photos of what the wetlands on the NRF look like. As you can see, for the most part, they are sphagnum-covered wetlands that are partially forested. However, wetland number 4 does have standing water. The rest of them do not. All right, as for habitat, every wetland except for number 5 had at least one category ranking higher, and wetland 4 was ranked higher in 4 categories: amphibian and turtle habitat, water bird feeding habitat, water bird nesting habitat, songbird, raptor, and mammal habitat, which makes it a very valuable wetland on the forest. And I will turn it over to Joel with wildlife, trees, and biodiversity.
Thank you, Emily. So now we're going to look into the wildlife trees on the land base. So a wildlife tree, also known as a snag, is classified as dead standing timber, and unfortunately, traditional forestry practices aim to eliminate this type of woody structure, and that is just because it is seen as a loss of value and a loss of volume. So these structures actually provide a lot of habitat for primary and secondary cavity nesting species, as well as many insects and small mammals such as pine marten, short-tailed weasels, and various squirrels. So now the Noonan Research Forest currently has 1.4 wildlife trees per hectare of forested land. So that is all land that does not include roads, wetlands, recently cut areas, and but unfortunately, the recommended amount for adequate wildlife habitat is 4 to 6 large wildlife trees per hectare. So unfortunately, Noonan is slightly under this threshold. And as you can see in the table at the bottom right of our slide, the 2 stands with the most amount of snags within them is our intolerant mixed wood stands at approximately 105 snags, and then our spruce stands at approximately 115. So now we're going to go back into modeling with Emily.
Thank you. We interpolated the 18 different stand types developed through the stand delineation, and we were able to input this data into Open Stand Model, or OSM, which is a growth and yield forecasting software that allows current data to be forecasted and grow over time. We chose to forecast this over a 100-year period. We took the outputs from OSM and input them into another growth and yield software by the name of Forest. This software is able to slash the forest growth and yield predictions out into products and predict these over time as well. The yields from Forest were then tabulated into Woodstock, which is a spatial analysis program developed by REMSoft. Woodstock is able to create and allocate a harvesting prescription based on outputs and inputs based around the parameters of the model. We created 3 different scenarios in Woodstock. The first scenario is a status quo. This is a 0 intervention, no harvesting scenario. This permits stands to continue along a natural succession. This does not allow for any carbon sequestration increase, and it does, however, increase the area of late successional forest by 600%. In scenario 2, which is our biodiversity scenario, we focus on biodiversity and carbon sequestration goals and objectives. In this one, we treat 440 hectares of the land to generate approximately $210,000 in NPV. The carbon sequestered increases by 500%, and the area of late successional forest increases by 700%. And in scenario 3, we target balsam fir. This is focused on reducing the content of balsam fir in the forest while still generating revenue. This permits other stands to grow into maturity, also increasing the area of late successional forest available. This targets 700 hectares of the land base to generate approximately $100,000 in net present value, while sequestering and increasing the forest late successional forest area by 500%. This is just a quick comparison of scenarios 1, 2, and 3. As you can see, scenario 2 checks all of the boxes, while scenarios 1 and 3 are missing checkboxes. And if you'll notice, goals 1, 2, and 4 are missing from the list. This is because they are public safety or liability goals, and they will be met regardless of the scenario. In light of this checklist, we do recommend the landowner continue with scenario 2. And a note on carbon sequestration. There's currently 70,000 tons of carbon being sequestered on the NRF. This is mostly contained in trees ranging from 10 to 30 centimeters in diameter. And as a note, the dollar values presented for scenarios 1, 2, and 3 are not currently available, but would be potentially available at the end of a 100-year planning horizon. Scenario 1 has no chance of increasing carbon, and therefore no chance for carbon credits. Scenario 2 offers potential for $1.4 to $7.4 million worth of carbon credits, depending on what market the carbon is sold in. And Scenario 3 offers $1 to $5.3 million worth of carbon credits, again, depending on the market. And I will hand it back to Joel with the operations plan.
Thank you, Emily. So now we're going to go into the operations plan for the land base. So we have a short-term plan as well as a long-term plan. The short-term plan is it spans the first 5 years of management plan. It's from 2022 to 2027. We have 2 different projects for this plan. We have an infrastructure project as well as an operations and research project. The infrastructure project it focuses on upgrading the roads, the boundary lines, the water crossings, and that's just for public safety and environmental stewardship, as well as the research and forest operations plan was made to meet and exceed all of the landowners' goals and objectives. So now we're going to go into our short-term plan. So the short-term plan, it focuses primarily on reducing the balsam fir composition of the Noonan research forest as per the landowners' goals and objectives. There'll be 2 different treatments used to harvest these stands, and that will be commercial thinning as well as clear cutting. Over the first 5 years, a total of 440 hectares will be treated. So over the first 5 years again, approximately 1/3 of the land base will have a treatment. And we are projecting a gross NPV of $210,000 from these harvest treatments. There is also a subsidy option from the YC Marketing Board for commercial thinning, which we recommend the landowner goes with. So now we did a sensitivity analysis on the commercial thinning side of the operations plan. Currently, for our management plan, the Marketing Board covers 80% of our silvicultural treatments, and as I just said, we are projecting a gross revenue of $210,000. Without the subsidies, the landowner would then lose 90% of this projected number, which will result in an NPV of $22,500. And then with the subsidies, as we said, after cost, the landowner would receive $110,000. And then in the lower left side of the slide here, you can see a quick comparison of the cost per hectare, and then the total cost for with or without the subsidy, of which both numbers are significantly different. We did a road assessment as well on the land base. Here's just a map of Noonan with all the roads and boundaries as well. So roads 4 and 11, which are shown in red as the northernmost road and the easternmost road. Road 11 needs a complete rebuild, and then road 4. Road 4 at the northern end needs a complete rebuild, and then road 11 needs extensive brushing. Both are accessible by foot, but not by any vehicles, unfortunately. Class 2 roads, which are shown in the yellow-brown color there, they need brushing and culverts to be embedded. So these roads are currently accessible by ATVs and trucks, but not by heavier machinery. Class 1 roads shown in green are good right now, but would benefit for some brushing just to lower the future costs and maintenance. So we also did a water crossing assessment. So this is the same map, but then we have our bridges in pink, our cross drains in green, and culverts in orange are shown throughout the land base. The crossings were graded from 1 to 3, from least to greatest severity, and unfortunately 18 out of 23 cross drains need to be replaced or repaired, and this is just due to rust or other issues with them. One bridge on the land base needs to be completely replaced, and that is due to safety hazards. And then another bridge is currently operational, but it lacked adequate signage, safety rails, and riprap, which is part of our management plan to install in there. At the bottom left hand of the slide, you can see just a breakdown of all the cross drains and bridges and then their severity classes and totals. So now we're going to go into our short-term infrastructure plan. We have a total of 10 cross drains, 1 bridge that will need to be replaced, and this is in the first 5 years, as well as all the boundaries north, east, south, and west will be brushed and blazed, and as well as all signage on the land base will be updated for safety reasons. And all class 2 roads on land base will be brushed for greater access for operations, for research, for recreation, and all this will be done in the first 5 years as well. So now we're going to move into a little bit of a financial comparison between the infrastructure costs and harvesting costs and the revenues. So the infrastructure cost, it comes out to approximately $43,000 in the first 5 years. The harvesting cost, it comes out to $56,000 in the first 5 years, for a total cost of just under $100,000. Unfortunately, there is no revenue coming from the upgrades for infrastructure, just from harvesting, and the revenue projected is $210,000. So after all the costs are said and done, there will be a net gain to the landowner of approximately $110,000, which will cover all of his summer intern objectives, as well as have $10,000 left over for any research opportunities they see fit. So now we're going to move into the project costs of this project. Most of these costs are just from the initial inventory last fall, which are field gear as well as mileage. The total cost came out to just under $2,000 for our group. We used ATVs for 7 days. Otherwise, it was just our personal vehicles, and the group shall have a total of just over 2,800 kilometers during the inventory of our project. The project hours from last fall and this winter were divided up into 4 different categories for a total of just over 2,900 hours, which worked out to be, with our 13-person group, an average of 223 hours worked per individual this year on this project. and we quoted an average forester's hourly wage at $42 an hour, which would work out to be $122,000 for all of the hours put into this project. So now we're going to go into our conclusion. So as Emily said earlier, Scenario 2 was our recommended strategy, and that's because it targets the primary goal of reducing all the balsam fir composition on the or on the land base, and as I said earlier, the NPV produced during our short-term plan is $110,000, which will cover all of the summer intern goals, operational costs, and still allow extra funding for any research that the landowner sees fit. The plan to improve the infrastructure and the protection of wetlands and waterways also it meets and exceeds the landowner's goals and objectives. And overall, this entire management plan has been tailored to the landowner's goals and objectives, and while still maintaining the ecological integrity of the land. So now we're going to move into our question period. Thank you.